G'day, welcome to Occamise. My name is Alasdair, I'm one of the co-founders, and I just wanted to say hello and introduce you to the product. So let me just show you where you can find everything in this video and give you a high-level overview of what's going on. Okay, so to start with, just want to point out in the bottom right-hand corner, there is a helper agent there. It's a user guide agent. You can ask it for help on any of the pages. You can ask it to write you a detailed user guide. You can ask for a human assistance, which will ping a member of the team, and they'll be able to get in touch with you to provide you some assistance. On this front page here, there's obviously some information, which you'll find similar information on all the different pages. The thing I want to really call out to you is this option here to schedule a complimentary introduction call. So I do encourage you, if you're interested in building AI agents and solutions and you're having any difficulties at all, to get in touch and I'll give you a personal walkthrough of the product and get you started. There's lots of different videos available on each page, and this particular video will be on this page in replacement to this version. And then on each of the subsequent pages within the solution, you'll find some information that explains what that component is, and a video that I do encourage you to watch on every single page. If you watch this video through to the end and you follow through with me in this basic tutorial that I'm going to be doing, it should give you a pretty good standing in terms of understanding where things are and how things work. All right, so let me just give you a high-level overview of the product. So AI agents are at the core of all conversations and interactions and happenings within the platform. Everything pretty much goes through an AI agent. You can arm your agents with knowledge, and knowledge will be automatically retrieved by the system and provided to the agent at every single step of the conversation. Channels are a way for you to connect a human or a system to an agent, and that can be anything from an SMS, a phone call, a SIP channel, a webhook, or obviously web chat as well. Abilities are basically one or more steps or actions to take within either the Occamise platform or within a third-party software system. If the ability requires function that you execute within a third-party software, then you need connections to connect those. So connections can be, everything that you see here or any other software that you can connect Occamise to through a custom HTTP connection. Tables are a basic storage for the Occamise agents. So you don't need to go to Airtable, for example, to create tables. You can store and manage structured data within Occamise itself. The scheduler is a way to schedule an action at some time in the future or on a recurring basis. Contacts and assets. Contacts are records that you can update with attributes that pertain to a particular user that's interacting with an agent. And contacts really are most useful in situations where there is an identifying attribute for that contact, like an email address or a phone number or something like that. So for example, a contact might be someone that's phoned you and you have stored some information about them. And then when they call back, the agent's able to access that information that you stored about that contact in the past. Assets are images or documents that you upload within the platform, and documents can be consumed as knowledge items as well. So I want to create a very basic solution just to illustrate how we build solutions within the Occamise platform. If you've got a second screen, I recommend putting this video to the side so you can watch it and follow the steps that I do. Once we get through to the end of it, you should have a really solid understanding of how things tie together. So to get started, we'll head over and we'll create a new agent. So we come to agents. Every page by default, when you haven't created anything yet, will look like this. And I definitely recommend you watch the videos and read the information on the page. So when you want to get started, you can just click Get Started and it will take you to the actual agents page itself. If you want to go back to that help page, just click Get Help. So we're going to create agent. We're just going to call it ChatGPT. And we're going to make it conversational and give it this default image. The prompt we're going to use for this agent will just be your role is to answer So that'll do for now. It's just a really open wide role for the agent. It's basically going to be like ChatGPT now. It's not going to be limited by any particular topic. It can just help with whatever. So we will hit save changes on that, and we can actually converse with this agent straight away by clicking here on the web chat channel. A web chat channel is created by default. So already in that very short amount of time, you've got a working agent that you can chat to. So I will go in and create a little chat now and just say hello to this agent and just show you a couple of different things. So I'm going to say, hi, how's things? I'm doing great. How can I assist you? So I can ask it anything. How old are the pyramids? And it's given an answer, and we can just keep on going asking questions. What I'm going to show you though is if I said something like, hey, can you please always call me Big Al? And we'll see what it says. Sure thing, Big Al. Let me know how I can help you today, right? Okay, that's fine. But we know that if I was to go back in and have this conversation again, it's not going to call me Big Al, right? Because it has no way of knowing that I asked it to call it Big Al in that previous conversation, and new conversations are nothing to do with the previous conversations. And that's the same with ChatGPT. If you've used that, once you've had a conversation, as long as, well, of course, if memory's not turned on, once you have a conversation, it doesn't remember anything about the previous conversation in your new conversation. So let's go back and just prove that point. So let's click on the chat button again, and you'll notice I come back to exactly the same chat. That's because this link here is always going to remember the previous conversation, so it's going to keep on going from where you left off. If you want to start a brand new conversation, you can come to the channels page, and then you can click this start chat button, and that's going to start a fresh conversation every single time. So I'm going to come in there and I'm going to go, hi, how's things? And it's just going to say, I'm doing great. And it's not going to mention so what is my name? It doesn't know anything. So we have now baselined our solution. It doesn't have any memories of previous conversations, and it doesn't call me Big Al, even though I asked it to always call me Big Al. Okay, excellent. So we need to give it the memory to do that. So what's the best way of storing a memory? Probably in a table. So we're going to create a table, and we'll just call it user preferences. And we can give it a description if we like. For this tutorial, we'll keep it quite simple. So we're just going to add a field. We're going to have a text field called preference and preference value. That'll do. And both of these are text fields. We could add other fields as well, like when was it added and things like that. But we don't really need that for the purposes of this very quick tutorial. So we're going to save changes on that. Now, we need the agent now to be able to store a preference in this table whenever it's appropriate to do so. And then for every new conversation, we want to make sure the agent has looked at its preferences from this table in order to inform that conversation. So to do that, we're going to need abilities. So we come over here to the abilities tab, and we create a new ability. Store user preference. Now, there are a lot of different services. Each of these services services that come out of the box with Occamise. A lot of these would need an external connection like Google Tasks, Google Calendar, Gmail, Airtable, etc. But there are a lot in here that you don't need any authentication in order to use. So there's the Occamise service, the Occamise API service, there's the Twilio SMS service, the Twilio voice service, the web browsing service, and custom HTTP requests. So all of those you can utilize without needing to connect to any other third-party software. Now, I know, because I'm an experienced user, that if we want to retrieve or store things in an Occamise table, we need to use the Occamise API service. So I select the Occamise API service, and now it asks which function do we want to use in that service. All we're really doing here at this point is just defining what our ability will be doing, or at least what the first step of that ability will be. You can have multiple steps in an ability, as you'll see, and this is just sort of preloading the ability with the first step. So we want the Occamise API service, and the function we want is to store a record or insert data into a table. And then we need to store this ability in a folder. We don't have any folders at the moment, so we'll create a new one, and we'll just call it ChatGPT for now. Okay, so by default, when a new ability is created, at the top half of the screen, in this box at the very top here, we've got information about when the ability should be invoked. And then underneath that, we'll have all the steps within the ability. In this particular case, you can see we just have the one step, and it's currently labeled step 1, insert data into table. We can change that as we will shortly. Okay, so we want to think about when do we want this ability to run, and we basically want it to run at any point in the conversation. Some of the other options, of course, is to run it before the conversation starts, after the user's nth message, or after n minutes of idle time. But in this particular case, it's going to be at any point in the conversation, and then we can describe when the ability should run. The agent will just use the ability based on this definition here. So we want at any point in the conversation when the user or agent, we don't want this. This is just the default value because this is what we chose as the first step. But we can get rid of all this entirely, and we can type our own description for when the agent should use this ability. So in this case, what we want to do is we want to store a user preference whenever the user says something that should be remembered for future conversations. So we just need to think about the prompting around that, and then describe that in plain English here. And then we can test it and tune it and make sure that it's always triggering at the appropriate time. So we'll start off with a description like this. So we can go with something like that to start with, and then we'll test and see if it works. So we're doing this together, but I think that should be fairly adequate for what we're trying to do. And the agent also knows that it's called store user preference, so it kind of has some insights into what we're doing. And it's going to have further insights in a minute when we define this first step. Now, requires confirmation, we can leave that off. And then under advanced settings, there are some different settings that you can choose to have or not. So visible to user in a web chat means that the user will see a message to say when this ability is being executed and when it's succeeded. And so you can either have the default ones, which is what you can see in gray here, or you can type your own. So I'll leave visible to user on in this case, but it's just a choice whether or not you would do that, depending on the situation. But because we're just doing this as a little tutorial, we'll leave the visible to user turned on. And we'll give the attempt message something a little bit better than assistant is running the store user preference function. We'll give it something descriptive. Storing user preference. So we'll say storing user preference, failed to store user preference, and user preference stored. And we'll save changes. All right. So first step is using Occamise API service. It's executing the function insert data into table. And what table? It's the user preferences table. All right, so the parameters for inserting a record into a table are basically the table fields. So you can see the two fields that we created here, preference and preference value. And then we can set a value on this. So there's two ways to set a value. Static, which means whatever you type in here is exactly what will be stored in that field. Or AI generated, which means the agent will choose the value at runtime. So we're going to choose AI generated for both of these, of course. And then we're going to change these descriptions. So in terms of what the agent understands about what function we're executing, we don't really need to consider it like a table insert. We can just consider it a function. We can do that because we can change this label. Instead of insert data into table, we can call this step we can call this step store user preference. And so we get rid of both of these. And in the description, you just describe to the agent what this value should be. It'll already know. We don't really need to do anything. We could just leave these two blank, and it would know to store the preference name in here if you like, or the description, and the preference value here. But I will just give it a little description anyway. The name or short description of the preference. The value of the preference. And that should do us. So I'm going to hit save on this. So we've just got a one-step ability. We could add other steps if we wanted to, but we don't really need to for the purposes of this quick tutorial. So this ability basically says we're going to store a user preference when the user specifies a particular preference or requests that the agent remember something for future conversations. It's going to have one step called store user preference, and it takes a preference and a preference value. And these are the descriptions the agent should use to determine what to store in each of those. Okay, excellent. And then we probably need another ability, which is to fetch the user preference. So we can come over here, create a new ability, and we'll call it fetch user preferences. And again, it's going to be the Occamise API. And we're going to be getting records from a table. So we're going to fetch table records, and we're going to put it in the same folder. Okay, so when should this one run? Well, we don't want it to run at any point in the conversation when a certain thing happens. What we want it to do is run at the very beginning of the conversation, so that from the very start of the conversation, the agent has those preferences available to it. So we could do that in two ways. We could either use before the conversation starts or after the user's nth message. So it depends on who's starting the conversation and when you need the preferences to be available. But for the purposes of this, we might as well just use before the conversation starts. Visible to user, I'll turn that one off in this case and hit save. So we won't actually see it fetch the preferences, but it will have done it. Okay, and then we're going to rename this step to fetch user preferences. It just better defines to the agent what it is that it's doing in this step, because it's not always exactly the same thing. Like we're fetching a table record, but from a functional point of view, what we're actually doing is fetching user preferences. So we're going to fetch table records, and we're going to select the user preferences table. And then under show function parameters, we have some different parameters that we can specify around fetching data from a table. So what are we going to put in these? We're going to hard code that we are just going to fetch all records from the table. So I don't need to apply a filter. So I'm going to have no filter. I'm not going to specify columns, and so on and so forth. So I'm just going to set all of these to static, and it's just going to pull every record from the table. But I could also formulate a filter using an array of objects with these values in each object. So save changes on that. So we have both of our abilities now: fetch user preferences, which will run at the start of every conversation, and store user preference, which will run when it is hopefully appropriate. So now we need to give those abilities to the agent. So we come back over to the agent, we open up our agent, we go to abilities, and we toggle both of those on and hit save changes. So now we can go and have another chat with this agent and see how it works. So we come over here, start chat, and we go, hi, how's things? I'm doing great. Oh, hey, would it be possible for you to always call me Big Al? Notice storing user preference. Got it. From now on, I'll call you Big Al. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to end that conversation, and we're going to go back in and start another conversation. And we're going to go, hey there. Now, at the beginning of this conversation, it's going to fetch its preferences. It's going to see that there's a preference to be called Big Al, and it says, hey there, Big Al, how can I assist you today? Now, behind the scenes, we can have a look at what it actually stored, because we didn't really control what that preference name was. We only sort of can guess, right? So let's just have a look what it did. So if we come back over here to tables, user preferences, table content, preference, preferred name, preference value, big Al, right? So let's just go back in again, start chat. Hey mate, how's things? Hey Big Al, things are great on my end. How about you? What's on your mind today? I was wondering if it would be possible for you to start every new conversation with a funny haiku. Again, preferences stored. Got it. From now on, I'll kick off every new conversation with a funny haiku. That'll do, right? So you get the idea, but let's just go back in and see what happens. Start chat. Hey there. How's things? Hey there, Big Al. Here's a funny haiku to kick things off. Coffee in my cup. Emails pile like autumn leaves. Where's my vacation? How's you? Awesome. Love your work. All right. So that was a very quick tutorial. Basically just creating a very, very simple agent with no particular defined role. It's just supposed to be basically like ChatGPT. We gave it the ability to store memories or user preferences, if you like. And then we make sure that on every new conversation, it retrieves those memories. So we've got some abilities involved, and we also had a table involved. So I think that's just enough to sort of whet your appetite a little bit about how easy it is to configure things in Occamise. And if you followed it along, you should have a good starting point now for some other ideas that you might be able to configure for yourselves. All right. Thanks for watching. Cheers.